Yep, we are live. Awesome. Um, it's Monday morning, and at least here in Washington, and Washington State to all the people watching internationally. It's obviously a joke because nobody's watching this internationally, but it's like noon. It's 12:30 actually. 12:32 is what the computer says here, but I look like I just woke up. It's a common theme happening here on these videos. But I gotta say, one thing that not gonna lie, man, I feel very privileged and honored and always amazed at is on Monday mornings when I hear all the traffic going by. So I live on a main road, and it always makes me smile inside to know that I'm still in my warm bed. Um, I do like to wake up early though and go running. So it's kind of a love-hate relationship with those Monday morning, late mornings. But I got up at about 8 today. This video is not about my sleeping habits or anything. So confidence, I was thinking about faith, and in church yesterday, the pastor was talking about, well, again, if you know Pastor Jonathan, he likes to have a list of verses, kind of runs through the Bible. I feel like each week is like I don't want to say a circus, but a circus of Bible running through the Bible. And if you think of like a circus, there's a lot of different things to kind of see, and I really like that because I'm, you know, my mind kind of works that way anyways, and so I like that he presents like kind of different aspects of the same web, really. And so we went all the way from like Genesis 2, and the latest in the Bible we got was Hebrews. So it's almost the full shebang there. But I was thinking about in Ephesians 4, and I read through that, and well, let me just pull it up here, or dial it up, in my Bible here. But there's a verse in there that says in Ephesians 4:26, "Be angry and do not sin." And I was like, huh, that's kind of a weird verse. Like whenever I see something pop out like that, it's like, okay, there must be an issue with my understanding. And I think that's the first thing, when we have something that's like a universal truth, like the Bible. I heard Myron Golden's like a guy that I've been liking listening to lately, and he says that there's a difference in what's true and what's truth. And so his argument is that the Bible is truth. And so if we hold something to be true, and then we discover that it doesn't line up with God's word, then we're obviously like thinking of it differently, or we need more context to understand it. And so when I was younger and growing up, it was like there was a lot of things that I maybe thought were true or truth, and sometimes we can even take the Bible out of context, which makes, which I feel is like, I don't know, shortchanging God in some ways. Like, and I'm sure there's like some verses to back that up. But be angry and do not sin. So that references back to Psalm 4, and so here's where it gets interesting: is every morning I say a little prayer of just like gratitude, and I've recently started like praying for people I know, and just kind of laying there, and I kind of have this like fantasy of that I'm actually going to have like this morning routine, and hopefully before I die, I can get this morning routine going. But part of it is like, prayer and meditation, and I currently do pray every morning, just a little prayer when I wake up, thanking God for, waking up and whatever, right? And so what's crazy is I went back to Psalm 4 because that's what this verse in Ephesians references, and it says, "Be angry and do not sin." This is Psalm 4:4. The next part of it, the second half, "Reflect in your heart while on your bed and be silent." And I was like, that's kind of interesting because that's what I do. So whenever I hear these these things pop out like this that like hit home for me, I'm like, yeah, I gotta like pay attention to this. And so I looked into that a little more. In the King James, I'm gonna pull up my Blue Letter Bible on the phone. Highly recommend it if you are if you like to look into words and meanings a lot deeper. In the King James, it says, "Stand in awe and not sin. Commune with your own heart upon your bed and be still. Selah." But stand in awe. So that's different than what it says about be angry, or where it says be angry and do not sin. That's a different thing, rather, right? Stand in awe. So I looked that up, and the actual word. So now I'm going to get out my Bible commentary. Thanks, Dean, for that. If you're watching this at any point, but got these Bible commentaries from Dean, and I think that's rad. But anyways, the Hebrew verb is ragaz, rahaz. I don't know. That sounds a little Hebraic, but it means to tremble. And so some translations of the Bible also say tremble. And what I was thinking about is like have you ever, I don't know if you've had this dream, but I've certainly had this dream where I'm confronted by, like, it's usually like some person trying to harm me in some way, and I'm just like frozen, like I can't do anything. I'm like constrained, and like in my dream state, I'm like frustrated by this, and I usually am like crying in my dream. And there's probably other, I could probably find interpretations of this, but so I was thinking about that, like in context of this verse, like that kind of came to my head, and I haven't had that dream in like quite a few years, but it's still like in there somewhere. And so again, Psalm 4:4, "Be angry and do not sin. Reflect in your heart while on your bed and be silent." And reminded me of that feeling of just like being constricted, and like you just have to go through that. And so there's some experiences I've had in life, like, this isn't really, I don't know how much I want to share about this, but I've been arrested a few times, usually for drinking and doing something stupid, or actually for every time drinking and doing something stupid. And by the way, I stopped drinking 6.5 years ago, and you should too. But in those feelings of, in an altered state of mind, right, being drunk and being in handcuffs, it's like absolutely the worst feeling by far. I remember I watched a show like years ago about, I think it was like firefighter training or something, and they had to go through like these tunnels, like these, like crawling through these tunnels. And I don't know how people do the caving thing. I mean, that is just like so creepy. But just like loss of control is like very near and dear to my heart. And that actually sounds like hell. My version of hell, I guess, would be that with, I don't know, maybe crying babies around me. It's like my version of hell. But anyways, chain me to the wall and put a bunch of crying babies around me, and I will probably go crazy. But in those moments, right? Like you just have to get through that. I mean, when you get arrested, or hopefully you never get arrested, but if you have, you'll know what I'm talking about. The cops aren't letting you out. Like, there's nothing you're gonna say or do like you're stuck. You just have to go through that moment. And I mean, I've been in jail for a night, actually, one time a night and a day. And I mean, same thing, like you're not getting out of there. So, what I feel like is in this, like you can either just like in your mind just get through it, and maybe that's like part of the military in me is like I kind of have this like thing where I'll just like get through it. Same with like running, like endurance running. It's like I don't always like running, but in my mind I've kind of set like, hey, I have to do this to get to this goal. And so again, like if you're arrested, the goal is to get unarrested, like get out of jail. And so you can either like just sit there and shut up, or you get through it and then you're done with it, right? And so I think that's what this is, like for me anyways. And I encourage you, if you read this or if you're watching this, like think of this in your own life. I'm only relating my experience. Hopefully you've never been arrested and never will be, because it's absolutely awful. But that's what I feel like for this is like tremble and do not sin. So a sin would be like, just like think of something in your own life that you're like mad about, right? Say your neighbor, I don't know, throws dog poop in your yard. Like you can be mad about that, right? But you can't go over there and like burn down his house. You can't go over there and knock him out. Like you have to just like sit and tremble in that, right? In relating that to this. But you can't sin. Like you can't uh again, like you have to react appropriately. Now maybe that is like maybe you fling it back in his yard, but even that, I mean, now you're dabbling in something where it's like now you're acting maliciously. And I think that's part of I think that's the intent of this is like you have to reflect on your own heart and how you're reacting to that. We can't control other people's actions. We can only control our reactions, which a reaction is an action, right? So this is a verb right here. Instead of be angry, it's tremble. That's the root of this. And so where this all comes down to is confidence. And it's about faith, that you have faith that something better is on the other side. And so the last video I made, I was talking about the narrow path and the wide path. And we have to believe that something's on the other side. And interestingly enough, Psalm 3, the heading is confidence in troubled times. You can't make this stuff up. Like, it just turned to this and it was there. And I think this is like how God works. At least for me, this is how God works, is like going down these paths and then all of a sudden like these other things kind of pop up. And it's kind of like I feel seen in my ADHD, right? It's like a never-ending bunny trail. You can just bunny trail forever, just keep going in the Bible. And you know what? It never ends. So I was thinking about this idea of the narrow path, thinking about faith. So the root of faith is actually, I wrote it up here, I mean, pistis, Pistis. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I don't know Latin at all, other than these like small words, and it means trustworthiness or confidence. So when I was younger, I thought of the idea of blind faith. When I had questions in church or asked people, one of the big ones for me was like the flood. Like, how did Noah get all these people together? And I always wanted to know how and why and all this stuff, right? And I don't think that stuff is blind faith anymore. now over the course of years and study and understanding and actually reading the Bible instead of just taking people's word for it, now I've come to a richer understanding of like what that means, like how the flood happened and why it happened. And, instead of saying like, oh yeah, it's just this like simple thing, it's like, no, this is like actually a monumental thing that we need to give it a little more time and attention. And I don't think it's blind faith, because faith is not blind. It's trustworthiness and confidence. And confidence, if you look at the word again, it's completely trust. That's what confidence is. So faith is not blind. And in fact, Hebrews 11, and you guys have probably heard this one, faith is the reality of what is hoped for and proof of what's not seen. For by this our ancestors were approved. So it's not blind. Maybe it's blind as in like our eyes, but the visible light spectrum is like a very narrow band of light. In fact, we don't even know the margins of light. Like we don't know the states of photons, like beyond the limits of what we can observe. That's mind blowing. Like basically, there's no end from our perspective. Like we know very, very little bit. And so I'm thinking about this idea of faith and confidence, and man, I had some really good stuff I was going to say in this. I'm drawing a blank now. I get bunny trailed too easily. It's a problem. So this morning I had I started waking up and was kind of asleep and praying and thinking, and I had some in between like sleep and awake, right? My eyes are closed and I woke up for a few minutes and then kind of dozed off, and I was kind of like that halfway in between state. And I had this vision of this boy, and I kind of imagined in my mind it was me. I don't know why I thought that, but wherever this thought came from, and it was like I saw the ocean, and this boy was telling me to like go in the water. And when I went under the water, I saw like this whole new world. It's a whole new world. You know the song. Anyways, so I saw this whole world of like new characters and creatures, and it was completely different than above the surface. And again, going back to what I was talking about, it's like narrow is the way, right? So think about a drop in the ocean. It's like a point of entrance to this like vast thing. And so I'm seeing like this new world, and I think that's what faith and confidence is that drop, like going beneath the surface to see what's in that wide expanse. And I read that, do you know, just over 70% of the surface of the earth is ocean, right? Literally like the oceans, Pacific, Atlantic, all this, right? And 80% of that is undiscovered. We literally have never mapped it. We've never seen it, right? We have like, I think they've probably done like satellite scans, but literally science doesn't know what species are down there, what it looks like, nothing. And That's a lot. There's like 100. So the surface of the earth is like 170 million square miles, right? Of that, 140, or no, 200 million square miles. 140 of that is ocean. 100 of that, I'm just doing math off the top of my head, so this might be bad math. You got to check this yourself. So 100 of that, so 50% of the surface of the earth is undiscovered area that's covered by water. Half of the earth that we all live on. That's crazy. But I bet you everybody watching this has confidence and has faith that there's something there, right? I mean, it's not just nothing. So here's where I'm coming. Here's the whole point of this thing. So faith and confidence. When I'm getting a little riled up. I know this is weird. It gets weird. Think of how I feel getting all riled up like this on video. And so wherever you're at right now, just look around you. You know, like even just like everything in this camera right here, the camera view. And I'm in this big room. I would show you my room, but it's just kind of weird because I don't want to put it all on the internet. Because this is actually my living. I actually live like that. This is my living room of whiteboards. I know it's goofy, but just right here, I occupy maybe like of this view, probably I don't know, like maybe 10% of this space. You know, just right here in this view. In this room, I occupy maybe like a fraction of a percent of the space, and I'm talking about all the air. We have faith and confidence that something's in the air, right? It's not just nothing. There's oxygen, nitrogen. You know, most of our air consists of nitrogen. I don't know if you knew that. You should read about this stuff. Again, nerdy science stuff. Only 20% of our environment has oxygen. In fact, I think it's like 21.5% to be more precise. And what's interesting is 19% is where OSHA says that you have to wear a respirator, like on a job site. 19%. That's how fragile the environment is that we live in. So we have faith that there's something else here, right? Even though I can move my hands freely and move in this space, right? It's only less dense. Look at you know how like oil and water separate, you know, that has to do with density. So it's more atomically dense. I'm more atomically dense. I have more atoms packed tighter. And this is all dimensional constraints. I'm not going into any of that stuff right now, but these are just dimensional constraints that we live in. But in all this other space, we have faith that there's something. And you don't, I'm not saying you have to take this to some weird level. I mean, literally, there's oxygen, there's other elements. You just can't see them, right? And so if we have faith and confidence in that, and we have faith and confidence that in 80% of the ocean, that there's something else through this one drop, we would just be one drop in the wide ocean, then why wouldn't there be something else than what we can see? I mean, people devote their lives to finding aliens. But yet you're going to tell me it's crazy to believe in a God? Come on, man. Anyways, faith and confidence.